Okay. Usually I'm kind of loudmouth anyway, but we'll go with the mic.
A little closer. Alline, a little closer.
Okay. The Bible verse I'm going to read is Psalm 34:8. It says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." And that kind of started my journey. Because the first taste of the Lord I had was a couple from a Pentecostal church that would come and pick my sister and I up every Sunday, take us to church, and buy us donuts afterwards. Unfortunately, the main thing that stuck with me was the donuts. So that was, but you know how we say plant the seed? That was the first seed that got planted. Christian people are nice. And they buy you donuts. So that was my first step. Now, my grandmother, she talked a lot about things in the Bible. I think she had maybe a Christian background. But at the time she was raising us, she had a lot of pearls of wisdom, but not a lot of action behind it. And she was raising us because my mom was an alcoholic. So she was in and out of our lives, but not a great influence. And I know a lot of you liquid off in comments about me and my sister being close. Well, the reason me and my sisters are close is because we are what we had for a lot of years. So that's kind of where that comes from. My next encounter in my late teens, my sister Edna married a man named Jim Harris, and he started taking us to church. And we went to church every Sunday. I went forward and I got baptized, and all I got out of that was a nice feel-good feeling. I didn't really grasp what it was because we weren't going to Sunday school. We weren't, the current term, I guess, is small groups. So I wasn't getting the meat of it. I just got the feel-good part. And so it didn't take very long before I kind of wandered away from that after I spent a few years playing Christian. Then in my early 20s, I went into the Air Force. At that point, the first couple of months, I got a good start in there. I was trying to go to church and, but it didn't take very long for that to fade. And I picked up a lot of bad habits, and I'm going to spare you the details of all those bad habits. But I can assure you that nobody after a few months would have recognized me or called me a Christian when I was in the Air Force. So I was still searching and unfulfilled, but I had all those seeds, and God had a hold of me. He wasn't letting me go. And when I came back home and I got re-involved with some better influences, I remembered those seeds, and I started thinking, okay, I'm not going in the right direction. And that's something I would say to the young people in our church. Your influences, the people that you hang out with, do matter. So hang out with good people. So, but then when I got back home and I started to internalize, I started to get the whole meat of the story, I rededicated my life, and I was baptized for the second time because I felt like, from what I'd been doing, the first one, obviously, I didn't know what I was doing. So, but again, I kept thinking I had to earn my salvation. I kept working toward it. I kept doing all the right things so all the right people would say all the right stuff. And it took a while to learn that there's no satisfaction in working or doing things for the church out of guilt. So I still hadn't quite got there. I was searching, but at least now I was kind of searching on the right path. Now, like I said, you don't get any satisfaction out of working for the Lord until you're doing it out of obedience and love. And once you start doing that, and what you're doing, that what you're doing is pleasing to God, that's when, your work starts to matter. And whenever I'm doing something now, if I've taken on a job and I'm feeling guilty or forced, I go back to God and I talk to him again and I say, okay, God, are you telling me to do this? Because if you're telling me to do it, I know you and I together will work through this, and I'll start doing what you want me to do, and I'll start getting the joy and love and satisfaction out of it, because we've got this. Together we've got this. You always tell me that. So, but if I have gone in a direction where you're not leading me, and that's where this dissatisfaction is coming from, then help me to transition to where you want me to work so I can have that joy and that satisfaction in that obedience. And so a lot of this I'm telling you to let you know that everyone doesn't get that growing up in church, instant life-changing conversion, where life just turns around and you're off and running. And mine was a slow learning process. But as I said before, once God has a hold of you, he doesn't let you go. He's going to use those seeds he's planting. He doesn't let his word come back void. And mentioning that I was in the Air Force, maybe now some of you will understand my rough edges, because I know sometimes I come off not smooth. So, but I'm still a work in progress. But what I've learned is that there is a peace and a joy in a personal relationship with God, and that he never does leave us or forsake us. And no one quits growing until they have that final rest with God. I mean, 63 and I still got a lot to learn, people. So keep working with me, keep helping me learn. And he has seen me through a lot of things that I could not have gone through alone. He always tells me, Alline, with me, we've got this. I've been through 2 different kinds of cancer. I stand here a survivor, healthy as a horse. I've been through a lot of family issues. I got to tell you that for somebody with no kids, I've dealt with a lot of kid issues. And knowing him on a personal level gives me a peace that passes all the world's understanding, just like the Bible says. And I know I can trust him in whatever life brings. And there was nothing that I would trade for the relationship I now have. And of course, you can't be a Baptist and do a testimony without talking about tithing, which was also a slow process for me. But once I embraced that personal relationship, and tithing was just a natural result. And I've never found myself in need or in want. Tithing faithfully. And then my sister kept telling me, Alline, you got to say something about what is he doing for you now? Because if he's not doing anything for you now, what are these people going to get? So my final thing I'm going to say is what he's doing for me now. I talked about all the children issues that I've dealt with, my niece and my nephew. And I have been praying for them since they were babies. And they have not had a straightforward path. But what he's doing for me now is he's letting me see them grow. He's letting my nephew mature and start to get on a path where he can take care of himself. He's letting my niece finally admit that she's got some issues that she can't deal with on her own, and she's seeking out some professional care for that. And so what he's doing for me now is the same thing he always does for me. He's leading me through the hard times, and he's giving me glimmers of hope. So thank you.